Hi there, name's Morphsuit America. If you haven't seen part 1 or the playlist for the Curse Affix stuff, you might want to look in the description or above my head. Or there, actually. Not only that, just note that if you're not a big fan of this stuff where I look over some stuff on the screen and check out what these abilities are and see what people have been using over on the global side, don't watch this video. Giving this disclaimer right now. Now, this hurts me. And some of you guys are pointing out some stuff here and there as well and giving some additional insight about certain things, so thank you for that. But yeah, this is part 2. This might take a while as well to get through. I chose a good chunk of the pictures that were sent to me, like through Discord and all that. Let's get started. Let's just get right into it. You guys know what it is. If you want to look at a specific piece, you can look in the description for those time skips. So let us go to the main screen now. Alright, first piece. Elegant Stamina. Prentice... Wait, what the hell is this? I don't know if it's a weapon or unit. Problem is, either way, this thing needs SSA. And I feel like this is on a unit piece because it is tame and it is within the 6th slot. Not hitting the 100 mark in terms of the attack. It is hitting the HP, but at the same time, it's like, there are other abilities. Now, despite me saying you don't want to emphasize on all these other stats, the thing is you want to go for something that can give you attack and then something else. Glare abilities, for example, I don't know when this was made. If you think about glare abilities, it has attack, it has a bunch of other stats. You would want to go for them because that is good compared to just getting something of like just a Spirit 3 or a Stamina 3. If this is on a unit piece, get rid of those two. There's alternatives, better things. Going for glare type is able to emphasize on that at the fact of astral. So, like if you were trying to emphasize on HP and attack, get rid of that apprentice, so put in an EF Acto Soul or something of that equivalent. If you want to try to get some other things as well, once again, you might want to consider a certain factor ability or glare ability or just like a sentence ability even. Or flint or armor, well, flint or altar, but like this piece, it's kind of all over the place. It does try to get a good chunk of HP, but once again, you would want to try to get a mixture of things. I don't know when this piece is specifically. I don't know if this is actually a weapon or unit. If it's actually a weapon, where's your SSAs? If it's on a unit, where's that one SSA, which is S-class abilities, and then all these other things. It's kind of over the place. Not a big fan of it. Also, people wanted me to rate this too. So before I forget, let me actually add something over here. So I don't need to edit it as much. Let me put a text over here. Let me just do that, I guess. And then... Alright, so over here you can see X out of 10. 10 being like the most cursed, 0 being not as cursed. What I'm gonna give this will most likely be... How do I change this? Now I'm looking over here so I could... I don't want to filter it, damn it. I need to change it. So what I'm gonna do is give it 4. Like, it needs some sort of... I'll give it a 5, a neutral one, because... Once again, like, it's all over the place. It kind of meets some requirements, but even then, I wouldn't stick with this. So this needs work on, though. I would not stick with these abilities. I would swap them out, change it later over time. If this is on a unit, once again, you can go for better. If it's on a weapon, where's your SSAs? You want SSAs. Enough of that first unit piece. Now, let me restart that back to X. X out of 10. Actually, I'll leave that for now. I'll just put a number over here and that indicates what the rating is. Goddamn, it's a TMG again. Most likely hero specific. Steadfast Will. What is Steadfast Will? Dead? Increase normal attack by... Oh, it's calming intent in a sense. SSAs look alright, maybe. Correct me if I'm wrong if you shouldn't go for that. Might be on a hero, or might be actual gunner. Exceed energy, Mitra. So everything looks fine until you stare at the two abilities. Most likely they used the SAP method for this, or it was dropped naturally, maybe. I have no clue, especially if it was novel prior to doing this sort of upgrade. But get rid of that Mutation 1, Mastery 3. I will give this at least a 6 in terms of its, like 6 out of 10 in terms of its curse. Because these two abilities down here, like, actually, this is workable, but I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Because those are the only two that's kind of stopping it. You can work with this weapon, especially since it has SSAs on it and it has a high attack power, but the Mutation 1 Mastery 3 shouldn't be on it. Now, would you want to do this? No, I wouldn't even go for it. Once again, they might have used the SAP method. If you're not familiar with that, that is special augment transfer. There's a certain way to go about it. I already have a video talking about it. You can look in the description for that. But I wouldn't have done that. That's a good chunk of passes used to just try to get this to 7 slot and to keep these things. If they did use receptors, why didn't they correct the Mutation 1 in Mastery 3? Like, this overall, if I had to use this, this would be fine. But at the same time, staring at those two abilities, it's not that great. Actually, wait, hold up. My rating system is off, because I said the higher the number, the curse it is. Or is it the lower? Anyways, just to establish it now. If I rate it at... most likely I'm going to have to give this a low number. It's not that curse, so I'm giving it a 2 out of 10. Or actually 3 out of 10 since the opposite end is 7. Because I can still work with this. It has SSAs. Depending on what it is, what class I'm using, it might not be the best SSAs, but I'm not a gunner main, or I don't use hero TMGs as much. But everything else looks fine, just that Mutation 1 Mastery 3, so... it's an eyesore, but hey, look, you can use it. In terms of the Vervalate Rifle... alright, so, what the alright, so one... even though they have SSAs, I got minus points off of this. Doesn't matter how much HP you fucking get. You don't want Life 5 adaptation on a fucking Phantom, especially if you're doing either, actually even for a fucking Ranger or a Phantom, you don't want it. Why? Because Phantoms and Rangers are squishy regardless. The best way to try to make them tanky, especially for a Ranger, is if you use the Twal class or the Hero, the Hunter class. But even then, they're not going to get a good chunk of HP naturally because the skill trees aren't designed for that, especially if you look at the Ranger and the Phantom. Phantom specifically has a more on the PP side, and you would want to actually emphasize on that instead. This is a no-go. I am giving this giant fucking, what? I'll give it a 7 because this 4 is fine. I think I would go for something else in all honesty, but that S5 is a big no-no. Get rid of that because of the fact that if you're doing Phantom Rifle especially, it does not actually benefit off of HP. I'm not saying you shouldn't go for a bit of HP, but it's not like you can get a lot of HP and then try to get the most out of Life 5 adaptation. You'll be using a lot of resources and going for specific things that isn't meant to be on Phantom. Like getting a lot of HP and building it on a Phantom, it doesn't matter because like if it's squishy, it's gonna die. Doesn't matter how much HP you have, if you don't build the right defense as well, you're gonna die. And I tried to use a defense augment affix with a Phantom main, they're gonna get killed regardless. They're not very tanky regardless of those augments and abilities. So you want to avoid this. Do not do this. Like, no, get these abilities off. Astral Soul is fine, Precision 6 is fine. That S5, that's a Stamina 6, no, get that shit out. This is high, this is above the norm. This is kind of in that curse section, which is why I give it a 7. And note that the higher the number, the worse it is. So this is something I wouldn't do. And once again, for Ranger especially, it's not going to be like that. And even if you have a Twal as a sub or a Hunter as a sub, it's still not designed to try to emphasize on the Hunter stuff. Like, it would be nice to have that Life 5 adaptation and give me that 3k, but no, don't. You're pushing a class that's not supposed to be HP heavy. So let me get rid of that number. Alright, So this is a leg piece, a Mirage Cell. Mirage Cell is at 13-star unit piece, I think. Yeah, 13-star unit piece gives a SAF of a stamina 6. What the okay, so this thing emphasized heavily on HP. It only kind of hits like a good chunk of attack. I would get rid of that Mastery 3. Get rid of those Precision 4 grades, because once again, your goal is to try to max those out and also try to find an alternative that can give a bit of both. So I would, now this might have been before episode 6 release, before the Glares got released, but even then, I actually know the Glares right there. There's Exegol. Now this might have been also during the time when the Divide Quest was out, and they actually, if Divide Quest was out, go for Metra and Shiva then. Like, get rid of Exegol, because you're not trying to be tanky. Well, I don't know what your class is specifically, but like, unless you have a tanky build, these augments and affixes are very questionable. Once again, I would rather switch these things out for something better that can try to give me a bunch of other stats. Especially like the Mastery 3. You don't want that because it's like plus 15 but doesn't give you HP PP. What I would do is put a Reverie in there, a Factor in there, could put a Senses ability in there, especially if you got a 13-star Cheval drop and you got a SAF. So, it looks like they're emphasizing on our attack too, so I would just try to find stats that would do that. Like, if Exegol was released, that means Mitra and Shiva should have been released too, because you got those Divide quests. I would go for it, at least. I think Metra should be the one that can give you our attack. Go for a Metra Glare, not an Exegol. Exegol is okay, but at the same time, it emphasized, well, on the defense stats, like a good chunk of it. Like, the Varuna Metra Glares, they give you the certain attack type, and then they give you a good chunk, a little bit of it, of defense, and a good chunk of HP and PP as well. So that's how you can tackle it. I don't know if Exegol, actually, instead of talking out my butt, let me actually look over here and see. Yeah, Exegol doesn't really give you defense. It gives you defense stats. Do you really need it? It depends on what the class is. I can't really tell. So I'm gonna have to give this... It's a 6. It's high up there. It's above the average because I don't know what they're doing exactly. With the abilities that I'm saying, you want to get rid of, like, at least 2 of them. Stamina 4 and then Mastery 3. Find something that can give you a good chunk of it. Like, if you go for Mana Reverie, that would be great. Note that that is pretty high up there, but just tossing it out there. If you were going for, like, if you want to, you could put a Factor ability, Senses ability especially. If you were trying to get a good chunk of attack and PP, like Doombreak, there's other alternatives other than just a basic stat. Like, it's fine for the attack one, but like for this thing, it's like you could try to dumb it down by having other abilities that give you both stats or a good chunk of other stats. I will rate this as a 6. I don't know what class they're playing. I can't really vouch for this one. Now, this one. This is a 15-star. This is a Gem Puros. It has the S5, oh god, now I'm giving, nope, this is a whopping fucking 10. Why? Because they didn't put any effort into the other 4 abilities. This is a 10. This is a 10, this is Curse. You got your SSAs. I will say thumbs up to that. I don't know how skilled this individual is. I don't know what class they're playing specifically. But, they're not getting the most out of that S5. The S5 Augment Bloom is pretty much you doubling the actual stats. Now, if they think that it's going to double the stats of the SSAs, that is wrong. It doesn't do that. It doubles the stats of your basic number, flat number stuff. So your power, your melee power and all that is going to get doubled. You can see here they're not getting as much. They're wasting this sort of potential. Might 6 is fine, but once again, because of Augment Bloom being there and it's having a huge presence, it's not as great. So yeah, and also just to make sure about all these other abilities, let me check what Aggressive Will is. Aggressive Will is a S2 ability. That should increase your attack power by 2%. Looks Lustrous Strike, increase your PP recovery. So yeah, I feel like they might have been misled of thinking like that Bloom affecting the SSAs. It doesn't do that, sadly. It does the stats. So I'm gonna have to give this a whopping fucking 10 because they're not really getting the most out of that Augment Bloom, and not only that, their 4 other abilities are not high up there. Should try to emphasize on that. Alright, moving on. This piece, back, Trailblazer, 13-star, has an SSA plus side. Oh god, it's one of these. I am very neutral with this. But at the same time, I'm like, huh. Now, for hero, especially if they want to use all the weapon types, you do want to have an all-rounded piece. They're just better alternatives. The problem is, though, depending on when this was taken, they might not have glares. Glares are good because, once again, they can cover a good chunk of things. Now, the very specific one that would be good to cover all the attack types would be Origin. And Origin would be able to at least give you HP and PP as well, a good chunk of defense, but it's going to emphasize heavily on all three attack types, melee, range, and tech. Just to make sure, what does Might 5 give specifically? Here's where I'm gonna say that you could put a Doombreak. Now, I'm not a big fan of that ability, but Doombreak can easily get at least most of that attack as well, and give you some PP. So you got like Doombreak 2 or 3, depending on which one is easy for you. Then you have like Persona Rev, EX Alley, so what is it? You can have a Glare type, but once again, depending on where they're at, they couldn't go for it. Could have went for Crack, maybe, depends on them, and then they could have went for maybe the Veteran Resolvability if they had time. What is it? The Ether Factor as well. Or Mana Rev if they really want to swap out the Persona Rev, but it's like, you don't really want, like, 3 basic stat abilities like that to try to cover it. It's like, the things I just listed is able to give you a lot more stats compared to just these abilities alone. Don't get me wrong, it's a whopping 40, but at the same time, you're taking up 3 slots so you can get 40 of one basic attack when there's an ability like Doombreak 3 where it can easily cover all 3 of these and give you a bit of PP. There are alternatives and you need to be aware of it. Just that, I don't know what was the situation. Once again, I think they are playing on here because of that S6. So I have to give this thing at least maybe a 6. Because, well, it's somewhere between 6 and 7 because of those 3 abilities right there. And I can just, once again, go for other alternatives to try to cover all these different stats. So, 6 or 7. I'm stuck in between that, so moving on. Next one. This one is pretty much Graceful Precision, Barrage Glare, Miser Soul, Sense of Precision 5, and the Stamina 1. Now, everything looks fine until you get to the Stamina 1. What the hell are you doing? I would swap that Stamina 1 out, put an SSA. It looks like it's on the 13-star. And then easy fix. And then it would look alright. Don't get me wrong, like, you could go for something higher than a Miser Soul, but if this is all they got, it's fine. But once again, this is a problem. Now, usually if I see one of these stats as well, it kind of hints that they might have used the SAP method, but I don't think they did. Hopefully they didn't, but like this could look a bit better. But once again, if it's within the budget, this is what they had to work with. At the very least, get rid of that Stamina 1, put a SSA. It's not going to be hard to do an S-Class ability transfer. I already demonstrated in my other video. Other than that, this isn't as bad. If they do that simple fix, this would go to like an immediate like 0 or 1 in terms of its curseness. Right now, though, it's going to be neutral 5 because of that one ability. Next piece, Trailblazer, 13-star. This is an arm. Where Nova was accessible, I feel like you could have just like replaced that Might 3. Now, once again, why the Mastery? I get it, you might want to counteract the Persona Rev, but regardless, you still got minus stats, so you didn't really tackle that as effectively. I'll get rid of that -3. I'll put an SSA in there. If I leave the Might 3 as it is, it could be okay. It could, once again, use the Nova and use the SAF to get the grade 5. If this is within the budget, it's actually okay. But once again, that Mastery 3 can go fuck itself. You don't need to try to do it, especially if you don't counteract it properly. So swap that out. Could go to maybe a 3 in terms of its curse, 3 to 4 in terms of its cursedness. Right now, I'm just gonna give it a 6 because of the fact that there's a Mastery 3 in there. There's no need to go for that if you're not emphasizing all of these different stats, because like I said, this thing is giving you 15 and you're not really getting a lot of the other stats like in Dex, and once again, your melee range and tech defense is still in the negatives. I would just replace that with Factor ability, a Doom Break 2 maybe, put in a... What else are they missing? Maybe a Glare ability at that time, I don't know if it is there. Actually... Yeah, I don't know if it's actually there, but if it's a SSA, would have placed, if this is the 13-star, would have placed it. If it's the 12-star version, if it's a 12-star version, I would have to give it some leeway and put it down to, like, a 4. I could look up the unit piece spot. I'm just gonna move on. There's no need to regurgitate the same shit. Alright, so this piece, Gaval. Now, this is the 13-star. With just SSA. Let me make sure that's 13-star. Elvidar to Cleasis to Scaval. Yeah, Scaval is usually the 13-star. With just SSA. Why do you have these 4 abilities? I'm gonna have to put this as... It's either a 7 or an 8. Somewhere between those two numbers. Why? Because Veculum... I don't think there's an SAF for it. Let me make sure. I don't think there's an SAF for Veculum. Veculum is actually annoying to deal with. I would get it if you were able to deal with a Veculum back then. But nowadays, there are so many other abilities that are better. Veculum doesn't even offer as much attack. Like a Doom Break can easily override it. Yeah, there's no ability for that. How much Veculum? Veculum's only giving you 20. Sentence abilities can easily tackle that. Alter, Flint abilities can easily tackle that. That can give so much. In terms of Stigma, Stigma's in reference to Dex. Why the fuck are you trying to emphasize on this? You do not need this Dex stat. It does give you plus 5 PP. Okay, if you're going for PP... great, but that means you should have went for like a higher Doom Break, at least a Doom Break 2 to fix that. Mastery 3 doesn't give you jack shit in terms of that. So Veculum, Mastery 3, Stigma, Doom Break 2, 1, it's like you need to do something with those abilities. Glare abilities could offer a good chunk of it. At the factor even, or just a factor ability can be better. Or once again, Flint, Alter, Sentence abilities. Get rid of that Mastery 3. You're trying to emphasize on our attack, then go all out and try to emphasize on our attack. Go for that precision instead of a Mastery 3. Once again, you're not trying to emphasize on all these different stats. You're not really trying to emphasize on that defense stat. Doom Break 2, be a bit better, gives you a bit more attack, gives you a bit more PP as well. Or you can go for Arcs Max if you want to. Arcs Max is better than a fucking Veculum by 5 points. Or you can go for Arcs Fever if you really want to try to increase your PP. Get rid of that Stigma, put in the Arcs Fever instead. So this is somewhere between those numbers that I listed. What did I say? 7, 8. Yep, nope. Moving on. This is another Trailblazer. Don't know if it's a 12-star, 13-star variant. Actually, did I already pull it up? I think I already talked about this because it looked like the previous one. Alright, moving on. I double-clicked on that one. Alright, Soaring Blades. Not Escalating Pursuit. Okay, I don't know if these abilities are good on a Soaring Blade. If you want to put your 2 cents, go ahead. They do have SSAs, that's a plus side. Why are their stats all across the board? You do not want that in terms of the attack. And from the looks of it too, could have been used with the SAT method, and I see a good chunk of HP. Now, 3 of these, well, maybe it's also a fix as well. I can't. Might be a transfer through the special augment transfer, or if they did affix it and use up a mark receptor and or an exceed receptor. Yeah, no. Like, I wouldn't put a stamina 5. No need for that. That's why you have unit pieces instead. Put that stamina stat on that instead. Weapons, you will change out of them. So, you would want to go for a lot of the certain stat. And for a lot of the Etoile stuff, now did you go, well, what's the other classes? Etoile and Bouncer. So even then, you would still want to go for a good chunk of the melee attack, especially since this is on a soaring blades that emphasize heavily on S attack stuff. Focus on the S attack. Don't want to just stress that out. 3 of these abilities kind of naturally give a boost to HP, so it's fine. The one thing that I have a problem with is stamina 6. So on this scale, I would give it a wait, what is this also? 6 slot? Would try to push it to a 7 slot as well. That's my opinion though, depends on this situation. I'll give this a neutral. Well, I'll amp it up by just +1 and just give it a 6 out of 10 in terms of curseness. You could work with this, but once again, that stamina 5 needs to go. That's why you have unit pieces, that's why you stack on your unit piece augments and abilities. And I wouldn't, once again, do it for weapons specifically because you are changing out of it. Now this piece, this is a Scaval 13 star, so it got an SSA, plus side, mana rev at the factor Astro, so I cannot actually bitch about this because it does hit the certain requirement. It does try to emphasize on a good chunk of stat. Actually, here's where I'm going to talk about Mastery 3. Now, you guys know that I kept on bitching about it, but this would be a good time to put a Mastery 3 instead of a fucking Stamina 3, because you are trying to emphasize on a bunch of stats. Now, would I usually promote this? No. But because of what I'm staring at, Mastery 3 would be nice. Hell, the other thing is, like, I might go say put a Noble Might as well. It looks like they are emphasizing on their melee power too, so could I put a Glare on there? I feel like this is an old unit piece too. The plus side to this is that you can use it to formulate the Guardian Soul stuff. So, I can't really... Like, I did use something like this in the past too, but I didn't have, like, the Might 4 and a Spirited 3. I did have Kraken there instead. I did have a 4 slot that was Mana Rev at the Factor Astral Soul, and then a Crack 5, or I used a Doom Break. I think mine was like a Doom Break 2 too, especially since during that time when I fixed it, it wasn't when the Doom Break 3 were such a thing. So yeah, they could have went for a Mastery 3 instead of a Stamina 3. This would be the only time where I would suggest it, because they do have Astral Soul and Ether Factor. They are trying to emphasize on a bunch of stats. You should do it. Now, it's not going to be that high of a number, but it's better than not really stressing that. Once again, this is the only time I would suggest that. If they have a Crack 5 as well, replace that Might with a Crack 5, that would look really nice. So I'm going to have to give this a 6 as well, because it's a bit above the neutral grounds, especially seeing these two. But the flip side to this, actually it's somewhere between 4 to 6. Because the flip side to it is that you can also use this as a piece to make a Guardian Soul, so it's not that bad. In terms of using it though, it is very questionable. It depends on your skills as well. It is evening out a good chunk. It did meet the attack requirement, but it's somewhere between that point range of mine. So going on to the next piece, another Scaval piece. It looks like it's the rear piece. Where's your SSA? You want an SSA. I will give it a Doom Break 1 and put an SSA there. Hold up. I would have to give this a 5 because the stats aren't the best. I'm confused of why it's not showing the Persona Rev minus unless something in here is tackling... Oh, EX Air Alley Soul. So you kind of negated a good chunk of the other stats from that, which is fine, but... I would have to give this, in terms of what I'm staring at, in terms of the number, I would have to give it... If you're able to push it to a 6 slot, it might be a tad better, but right now, I'll give it a 6. Because I don't like those numbers that I'm staring at. Like, it has a good chunk of HP, but the problem is you don't have a good chunk of attack on it. It didn't hit that 150 multiplier, or the certain stat number. This will ultimately fall on what class they're playing and their skills on it. Like, you can work with this technically, but at the same time, you would want to have certain things like an SSA at the very least. Get rid of that Doom Break 1. That's going to decrease your attack though, so yeah. I would swap out that Graceful Stamina with at least an attack one instead. But once again, this falls on what their skills are and what class they're playing, the combination to it, and how they're going about it. So I'll give it a 6 right now because it's like I don't know what else to say about this. Now, moving on. This one is the Knuckles. The Knuckles has an S4, S5, Goliath. Isn't that in reference to bosses? Recover 40 PP every 10 seconds when there is a boss nearby. Very conditional, but it looks like they're doing stuff with Fighter. Now, Elusive Smash I'm not familiar with, and this is actually the first Knuckle weapons I'm staring at too. Knuckles only increase attack by 2% upon successfully evading an enemy with Sway. Unleash a counterattack with a large meteor fist. So SSAs look nice. But the S4 is very conditional because it states the boss mechanic, and you need to be near a boss and you'll get this amount of PP for that. So if you're not fighting against a boss, this is actually not doing as much, but I don't know what classify as a boss too. It could be those mini bosses, it could be the giant raid bosses, so if you want to point out some other SSAs they could use, put it down below. So let's start out the other abilities. Might, X, EX, Acto, Mark, and Exceed. Could have did a stat method for that. Could have dropped naturally if it is its novel state. Could use some work on. I would push this to 7th slot. It's not as cursed. If there were dim weapons around at that time, could have gone for Might 6. But it pretty much does its job, unless those SSAs aren't great. So right now, I'll give it... Do I want to give it a 5? I don't know. I can't figure out the grade for this one, because you could technically work with it, but it ultimately falls on those SSAs. So right now, it's a neutral score at 5, because I don't know if it's cursed. I don't know if it's okay. Moving on, so this one, I'm gonna have to zoom in on this one. A sword. How's this for S5? Think that's fine. Might be more towards hero side. Now I got a feeling that several things could have happened. One, they could have actually made this as it is. Great on them, but they might have also did another thing, which is to use the SAT method. It was originally at like whatever it was. I don't know if it was a 4-star or whatnot, but pretty much what they did is have an Exceed Energy Might 5 Mark Riff and then Glare, and then they might have did a SAT method with that. And they did this naturally. How do I feel about all this? It's fine? Wait, hold up. I need to figure out what this Griff is. Because I think that would determine why this is cursed. Okay, yeah, now I get why it's cursed. Okay, so all these other abilities I think are fine. Let me make sure by the Glare ability too. The Griff isn't good. Now, you don't want to build up on defense on a weapon. Like, I get it, if you want to stack on it, fine, but at the same time, these are not giant all-rounder stuff. The thing that I did to stack on all these different stats is that I did use Ether, Soul, Guardian, Soul, and an Ether Factor. Those are giant numbers altogether. And that would be good. And if you have an S5, especially the Augment Bloom, guess what? That's going to double it. That I could see being used. But something like this is kind of all over the place. And in all honesty, especially depending on... Like, this would make a bit of sense on a Hunter main, but I don't know what the class is. If they decide to go hero, you may not want that, because the big thing you want to know how to do with hero is to know how to counter and evade and all that. So, yeah, that Griff shouldn't be a Griff. Might have changed it to Glare, but if that's the only type that they got... Hold up, I lied. That Glare is also bad, because it does not emphasize on the right attack. That range power shouldn't be high. Swap that Barrage Glare for something that emphasizes on your S attack. I think Exego would be a great alternative, but once again, it depends on when this was set. Actually, no. Could be, what is it? Maybe Ford? One of these glares is supposed to have melee attack. No, Ford is even worse. Angie? Angie or Dominius? Let's see. I think Angie might be the better of the two. Yeah, Angie. Angie would have been nice. You slap on an Angie, that gives you melee power. That's what you're going for, especially for a sword. It doesn't really have any sort of stat towards R and T. Unless you're trying to emphasize it. Well, actually, even then, like, the moment you swap weapons, that other weapon is gonna emphasize on that certain stat. So you don't need to try to make an all-rounder weapon for that. It's not gonna work, because once you hold a certain weapons, those augments and abilities are gonna kick in with that particular weapon you are holding. So yeah, nah, this is because I'm seeing defense stat, this is gonna go to at least a 7 or an 8. Because you don't want this. You want to do that on your pieces, and not only that, if you are playing as a hunter, you want to be tanky, you want resist and HP on your unit pieces, and you want to go for those certain pieces that can give you the most of the resist stuff. So in terms of weapons and them having all these, you don't want that. So 7 or 8. Other than that, SSA seem fine. These abilities seem fine, but these two are questionable. So Trailblazer, alright, Trailblazer, where's your SSAs? Where's your goddamn SSAs? You need your goddamn SSAs. S1, S2, S3, those are good. You don't want to trade those SSAs in, especially if it has a certain stat, or it can give you a certain emphasis on your playstyle. You don't want to trade it for flat numbers. It's not going to benefit you as much, the only fucking numbers. So get rid of Mastery 3, Lucky Charm 2, Panic 3. I don't know what the weapon element is. Here's the thing about status. Unless you are specifically making sure that you can put status and you benefit off of it, you don't want to go for them usually. And you also need to make sure that the weapon has the right element. You don't have to, but it is recommended, because the right element on the weapon with the right element status effect that it can give to enemies will help greatly. It will proc. It will give you a higher chance to proc to be put onto your opponents. So you don't want those. So swap the Mastery 3, Lucky Charm 2, and Panic 3 off. The reason why you have an Umbra stick is because it gives you a Lucky Charm 2, or it gives you a rare drop rate boost. You swap into it at the very end. If you're lucky, you can get that, the stick, Temptation, and then Lucky Charm 3. But you don't want it on your actual main piece. You're just taking up a slot. This right now, I'm gonna say that this is a whopping 10 with SSAs. You want SSAs. Everything else, Graceful Might, Mark Joy, Persona Rev. Actually, hold up, Lucifer Soul. There's an alternative. Lucifer Soul is also questionable, because Lucifer Soul can give you 20 in S and your T attack, your melee, and your tech power. But why not just have like something that does emphasize on that attack power? And if you want to make sure that you're not wasting some missed potential as well, check the second tab and make sure that this Trailblazer does not emphasize on that T attack stuff. You don't want to try to increase that on purpose. But yeah, this is a 10. Last one for this recording. Revelate Sword 35. I'm giving it a fucking 10 right here. Where's your SSA? Yeah, where's your SSA? The problem is if you decide to overwrite this too, like if you get rid of 2 abilities, it's still not going to look good, because now you're at a 5 slot. This is why you wouldn't want to push 6 slot, 7 slot, 8 slot. So you can get those SSAs and then these normal stats. With no SSA, it's like, once again, you're dealing with this thing. Even though this is workable, but you gotta have to have the right skills as well. When you see my Profound Darkness challenge, I did use the full stuff. But at the same time, it took me longer for me to try to complete it because I didn't have some of these other small benefits. Like SSAs are that good. So, yeah, like the problem is if you put SSAs in here and you leave at a 5 slot, you already decrease that melee power greatly. So that's why I'm giving it a giant fucking 10. Because you want to try to keep these, but also have those SSAs. You would need to push this to at least a 7 slot to keep those stats and then have SSAs. Then that might be a lower number. But right now it's a whopping 10 because if I swap something out, it's going to hurt that number. That is it for this recording. So thank you guys for watching. As you can see, I contemplate a lot and I just like think on these things. I'm not an expert of all these different classes, but at the same time, I know the bare minimum to understand like this is something you would want to do, this is something you don't want to do. Also, phrase decay, since I haven't mentioned it throughout this video, it is a good option, especially if you don't plan to do solo content, because phrase decay is a percent stat, and if you put it on a weapon specifically, you are going to get that as long as you are in a party that has a gelin. There will be situations where it's not, but most of the time, hopefully, there will be something like a hunter or a ranger or a phantom that can slap on the gelin. Even Luster can do it. You just gotta know your skill trees and know all these different classes. That is it. Let me know your concerns, thoughts. If you want to add on to some things, put it down in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.